In the last video, I talked about cultivating faithfulness in the small daily things. And today I want to chat about the practicality of that, starting with how to find more time in your day and finishing with staying motivated and joyful. Here are 5 things I have found that get me more time in the week. Number 1, grocery shop in bulk and then learn to cook out of a pantry. Meal plan with leftovers and double meals in mind. And I understand that that's a big one. I'm working on some videos to give practical help in this area. Number 2, teach children young to be a help, not a hindrance. They love to help, and a little training goes a long way in gaining you hours each week. Number 3, if your husband says it's good, believe him and move on. More on this later. Number 4, begin your Sabbath prep early. Clean 5th day and cook on 6th day. My children called it pre-prep day and prep day. They understood their role in both those days, and it very much prepares our home and hearts for Sabbath. Number 5, procrastination happens. So do the things you hate first and have a list of 5-minute items that you can just jump up and do when you feel overwhelmed. Along with this, know where you're wasting time and curb those areas. Something that I've streamlined over the years is my task list. Now, I like to plan, I like to organize, and I like to keep a schedule. But over the years, I realized that I would actually overwhelm myself with these lists, and I use them to procrastinate, or worse, become chaotic. I think of a verse in Sirach, "Do not be a lion in your own home, nor frantic among thy servants." Now, I keep a single sheet for an entire week, a few extra tasks, my daily chores, my meal plan, and that's pretty much it. I've also learned over the years to prioritize my life and my work based on my husband's preferences, priorities, and commands. I'll talk about this more in a bit. As for scheduling, one of the biggest helps for me is to expect interruptions. Lots of them. Plan them in. Plan to have cranky children that need extra help with homework, odd things your husband needs to have done, unexpected company, power outages, loose chickens in the garden, etc. I try to live with this in mind. Don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. If you can get ahead on your chores because the kids took long naps and everything is going smoothly, do it. I can't tell you the number of times that this has eased my life when things went askew. Along with this, limit unnecessary interruptions. Personally, I set a do not disturb on my phone for everyone but my husband, keeping in mind Proverbs 14:23, "In all labor there is profit, but in the talk of the lips tendeth only to poverty." So now the big part. This journey of ours sees projects in years, not days, and keeping motivated and joyful can be difficult. But before I dive fully in here, I want to offer a practical bit of advice on avoiding discouragement, specifically in difficult seasons. There are going to be a lot of times in your life you are ill, bedbound, nursing, sitting with a sick child, and these hours can be difficult when you constantly think about your to-do list. This is harder when you're younger. Don't take guilt for spending time just sitting with a sick child or sleeping when you are ill. That is unproductive. For the times when you have to be still but are able to do something, use those hours to study, to pray, to work on a crochet project. But take the time necessary to heal or to be with those who need you to simply be still. I have spent many hours over the years holding sleeping children, hours I am very grateful to have spent. These times are often your best moments for prayer. Now, as to the discouragement of feeling overwhelmed and underappreciated in general everyday life, this requires scripture. And it requires us to look at scripture honestly, to see what's being said and then be willing to apply it to our lives. I'm here to tell you those feelings of being overwhelmed, burnt out, neglected, unappreciated, they're all works of the devil. They are there to sideline you, to take you out of the fight, to toss you off the path and just leave you there on your own, bleeding and broken. They don't offer you solutions. They don't offer you help. They are unproductive. It took me years to recognize them and turn away from them to scriptures like 2 Corinthians 4. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceedingly and eternal weight of glory. While we look not at things which are seen, but at things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Here we get the assurance that these struggles, while real in the flesh, do not tarnish the beauty of the eternal. I also rely heavily on Matthew 6:33 in the very practical knowledge that when I put my nose in the Word and get out a pen and start writing and learning and praising, my day is completely different than those days where I neglect the Spirit. Discouragement is a battle of the flesh, not the mind. When we put our mind in Yahweh's hands and we focus and meditate on His words, the discouragement can't seem to get a foothold. It's when we dwell on the body, its pains and limitations, our finances or physical situation, then we become discouraged. But Yeshua tells us to not worry about these things and to seek righteousness instead. It works. I can't tell you how many times I've been in an absolute down spiraling funk and had the thought in my head saying, go pick up the book. And when I obey, the discouragement and the overwhelm fade away. My husband will tell you that he loved my mind first. It's our conversation and study that truly enthralls him. Because while I can cook all his favorite meals and raise his children by his commands, it's those moments that we speak of Yahweh that brings his heart solace and peace. Because of this, I have at many times become distant to him when I strayed from study and conversation with him. And each time I am gently reminded in my spirit of my husband's priorities for me, and it always brings back the relationship I crave with him and tosses discouragement to the curb. Now, let me bring you to a scripture that provides me great strength. Psalms 37. I want to sit with verses 4 and 5. And before I read, I want you to think about Paul's words in Ephesians, where he's asking us to walk in love and follow the chain of command, as well as 1 Corinthians, where he says, be followers of me as I follow Yeshua. We know by these verses and many others that chain of command, when working properly, when following the ways of Yahweh's kingdom, can allow for wondrous works. This knowledge allows me to follow my husband and see his words with the authority of the Father in my daily life. Dismiss the notion that I see or obey my husband as a god. That's idolatry. But women have been distracted over the years with the words of the world, not their husbands, and certainly not Yahweh's, and have forgotten to call their husbands master. For me, as a wife, I see so much beauty in Scripture because I get to be the bride every day. I get to rely on my husband and learn his ways. I get to pattern that every day, and it makes it easier to pattern the ways of Yahweh. It also makes passages like this in Psalms so much more meaningful to me in how I live my daily life. So hold all of that in your heart and listen to these 2 verses. Delight thyself in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it all to pass. Now, if I'm following chain of command, and my husband is following chain of command, then I can put my trust in the fact that my husband's vision for our family, His requests for my daily work, His judgments and rules for how our house runs are just and good and should be followed. These verses remind me to delight in the ways of my husband and the rhythm of his home, and to commit my hands and words to his ways and desires. These verses remind me that this is what is going to bring peace in my life. In practicality, that means that when I feel discouraged, I know that I am most likely not following the path of my husband, and that thought alone, usually after years of practice, brings me back in line and gives me joy in the daily small tasks. Here's the kicker, and the real lesson for finding joy in the long haul, whether that's writing a book, raising a child, building a home, or walking out your salvation. It's the small, daily, moment-to-moment acts of obedience to your Master that brings you joy and helps make the next step easier. There is no other trick, no list or planner, no motivational speech or gadget that is going to give you the strength you need except the words which Yahweh already gave you. Abide in Him, live in Him, and receive all that you need. If you are struggling with this, talk to your husband. Humbly ask for his direction. Ask him what his priorities are and how you can help. Tell him your heart hurts and that you feel disconnected from him. Ask for his forgiveness and then commit to him and what he tells you to do. Yeah, kiss your pride goodbye. Well, don't do that. Toss your pride out like the filthy rag of sin-soaked nonsense that it is, and replace it with genuine, 100% kingdom-grown love for authority and your rightful place in service to others. That is love. Yes, I hear the conflict of your heart, sister. I do. But I'm standing here to tell you that when I'm on the same page as my husband, he sees my struggles and seeks to help me. When I veer off, the frustration mounts because my concerns are outside the path, and all my husband wants for me is to come back and focus on righteousness. Me veering off is what produces the friction, the unrest, the wakeful hours worrying that he doesn't love me or see me. But when I push aside that demon and instead do the daily things my husband wants and needs me to do, those feelings change, and I'm at ease. Scripture reminds us constantly that disobedience leads to pain and suffering, loneliness and loss. The Word counsels us to hold to the path, to be a servant of Yahweh in all areas of our life, for our own good. Don't ignore it. Don't ignore the many, many verses that talk to us about the dangers of pride and envy, of not keeping our eyes focused on the proper chain of authority. I'm going to leave you today with a few verses from Proverbs, because Yahweh's words are so much more stirring to the soul and to obedience than mine could ever be. My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. For length of days and long life and peace shalt they add to thee. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck, write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. It will be health to thy belly and marrow to thy bones. Honor the Lord with thy substance, and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses burst with new wine. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom Yahweh loveth, he correcteth, even as a father the son in whom he delights.